Alpha Males. Welcome to Alpha Male Podcast, where we talk about what it means to be a man the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you today as your host, Michael Milito. I'll forego the normal bio, but just briefly, because it pertains to today's topic, I've been a professional gunfighter most of my adult life. 2 combat tours in Iraq, Marine Corps Infantry. After that, I was an urban warfare instructor for the U.S. Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also was a law enforcement officer. I worked LAPD, I worked regular assignments, and more specialized assignments. One of those being fugitive recovery, which you might imagine plays into today's episode. I've also been a private contractor. So you might deduce from that background, a lot of that has to do with literally being a professional door kicker, entering structures. Also as a police officer, taking reports and responding to crimes against people and crimes against property. I'm going to try and use that experience to serve you today, to help you as that alpha male better protect and provide for you and your loved ones. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. With that, let's talk about home security, home hardening, home defense. The first thing I'm going to tell you is the 10th commandment. You shall not covet. Many a sin first starts with coveting. When Eve was in the garden, it says she looked at the fruit, pleasing to the eye. Many times we covet before we physically commit a sin. How does that play into today's episode? The 10th commandment, you shall not covet. The full commandment, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Do not be that low-hanging fruit. Do not leave things visible where other people are going to covet them. Now, let me be clear. If somebody breaks into your house and takes your stuff, or commits murder, or battery, or uses somebody's body without consent, that's despicable. That sin is on them. But I'm trying to help you deter that from happening. So make it harder. Make it not so obvious for them to covet. For instance, your vehicle. You're parking in town. You're running in a store real quick. Look around. Do a quick scan around your car. If there's a purse on the seat, maybe throw a jacket over it. If you're leaving your cell phone to charge, maybe put it under the seat so nobody can see it when they look and they don't see a cell phone sitting there. Do some urban deception and camouflage. You got some cash in the car, put it in an old fast food bag. Now, somebody is more likely probably to break in because they see a 20 sitting in your cup holder than they are if you have a fast food bag on your floorboard with 10 grand in it. Don't leave anything in plain sight that people are likely to covet. That goes for your house as well. You just got a TV, which I would advise against. I don't own a TV. I think you're probably better off with that one. But let's say you bought a big screen TV. You got that giant big screen TV box. Probably don't leave that in front of your trash for the trash man, because everybody driving by there is going to say, hey, John Doe just got a brand new TV. And guess what? Criminals are going to see that too. And if they're casing a neighborhood to see where to break into, why not start there? Also, we think about strategically planning out your house. So if you do have those expensive things, they're not in plain sight of, like, let's say the main road. That's the first thing we're going to talk about there. So discourage coveting. The next thing I'm going to talk about, the next time you're out away from your home, your domicile, when you are returning from work, from the store, from whatever, don't think about your home as the person that lives there. Think about your home like a criminal that's going to break in. Drive around your block, your cul-de-sac, whatever, and think, if I was going to break into one of these houses, which one is the low-hanging fruit? If that's you, do something to change that. Don't be the low-hanging fruit. Number 2, think about, okay, you're that criminal. You've decided this house, meaning your house, is the one you're going to break into. What is the most effective way to break into that house? For instance, and I'm just making this up, there is a side door with a fence close by that's not in view of any neighbors or anything to the public. Somebody could simply walk to your side door, very concealed, and kick it in and walk right in, and nobody would be the wiser. Maybe that's the case. Maybe you leave a window cracked and somebody can simply push up that window, cut the screen, and be in your house. Whatever that answer is for you, whatever the easiest way to get into your house is, fix that first. On entering, burglary, or anything where somebody enters, breaks the plane of your property without your consent with the intent to commit a felony, whether that be theft or assault, battery, mayhem, using somebody's body without consent. I like to keep this kid friendly, but it's a pretty weighty topic. That stuff happens. Home invasions happen. If they're going to do that, how can you make that harder for them? Start there. And talking about doors specifically, as somebody who's kicked down doors, most doors are alarmingly easy to kick in. Like, they buy you some time, they may give you a warning, but most residential commercial doors can simply be kicked in or shoved in. And you might think, oh, a deadbolt. Well, a deadbolt itself is strong, but if it's in a normal door, you're talking about, what, a quarter, a half inch, 3/4 of an inch of wood on each side of that deadbolt? That deadbolt might be pretty sturdy, but how hard is it to break half inch of wood? Not very hard. Something as simple as taking those usually fairly small screws out, drilling a little bit longer holes, and putting bigger, beefier, longer screws into the plate that goes into the door could buy you a little bit more time, make a little bit more noise. There are many other products that you can use, but you might want to start there, just beefing up the door frame, because that's generally what gives when you kick in or bust in a door. Another real simple, easy thing, windows. Now, if somebody just wants to throw a brick through your window, they're probably going to, but that does make noise. Again, low-hanging fruit, if they're just walking around a neighborhood, dressed as a service technician or just in regular clothes, knocking on the door, hello, is anybody home? Middle of the day, nobody answers, and they start walking around the house trying windows. Don't leave those unsecured, and a way to beef those up that's pretty affordable. Simply getting a dowel rod or like a 2x2, cutting it to the proper length and laying it horizontally or vertically, depending on which way your window opens, in the window frame. So they literally kind of have to break the window. On that note, a lot of people only think of what if somebody breaks in at night, and they think of criminals as being active at night. And if it's a home invasion where they want to do harm to you or your family, yeah, they're probably going to break in at night because you're probably going to be home. But if it's a property crime, a burglary, just think about that logically. They're most likely going to break in the middle of the day because that's when most people are at work. You're probably going to be at work, and your neighbors who might be witnesses are probably going to be at work. So think about that as well. I'm going to transition and talk about alarms real quick, in my opinion, and from my training and experience as a police officer. I don't think they're very effective, commercial alarms. I just don't believe they're effective. I never responded to an alarm call where I caught anybody actually breaking in. I don't know any cops who ever responded to an alarm and actually caught anybody. Now, I'm sure different alarm companies work different ways, but let me give you an example of an imaginary scenario. You can deduce from this what you will. You have an alarm company, Rock Solid Alarms. I just made that up. There may be an actual alarm company called that. If so, I'm not talking about that company. I'm making up an imaginary one. Rock Solid Alarms. You get all this installed. You have this alarm. It's all good to go. It actually is working even. You remember to turn it on. Somebody kicks in your front door, walks into your house. Clocks start ticking. Alarm goes off. Alarm company tries to contact you. They don't get a hold of you. You say, okay, maybe a legit alarm. That alarm company probably has a technician. Let's say that alarm company is in New Delhi, India. Somebody in New Delhi to figure out where you are. Let's say you're in Spearfish, South Dakota. That's where I am right now. They try and find out what law enforcement agency has jurisdiction there. They contact that dispatcher. So the dispatcher now has the call. The dispatcher looks for an available unit. This is not a priority call. So if there is not an available unit, it's going to get put in a queue. So whatever next available officer, sheriff's deputy, is going to take this call. Let's say it's a slow night or a slow day. There's an available unit. They dispatch that officer. Let's say he has to drive, I don't know what's a good distance, 10 miles to get to your house. And this is like a kind of a really good scenario. How long did that take? Theoretically 20 minutes? Let me ask you this. If somebody, a determined attacker, wanted to break in and do harm to you or your family, or take your property, how long do you think that's going to take? You think that's going to take 20 minutes? Alright, so there's my thing on alarms. If you want, I would suggest getting alarm stickers and signs and putting those up. Again, don't be the low-hanging fruit. If they see a couple of houses and yours has alarm signs and nobody else does, maybe that makes you a harder target. But the actual effectiveness of alarms actually working and catching intruders, I don't have much faith in those. What I do have faith in, and from my training and experience, large guard dog breeds. Now, a dog is a big responsibility. I love my dog. He does require some effort. It's a mutual relationship, but he very much depends on me. That's a big responsibility. But big guard dog breeds absolutely do work. A criminal who's looking for that low-hanging fruit, they go up to your door and a 120-pound Rottweiler starts being aggressive. That's a pretty hard target, right? If I told you you had to break, like, you're playing the criminal. Thought experiment. 2 houses, identical. One has an alarm. One has an angry 110-pound Rottweiler. Which one of those, if I said you have to make it in there and get to the master bedroom, which one of those houses are you going to break into? Okay. A guard dog breed. And I did a whole episode recently, rebroadcast it on alpha dogs, alpha dog breeds. But a good guard dog breed, watchdogs work if you were at home, but a guard dog breed I think is a good choice if you want to put the time and effort into that. I mentioned a Rottweiler, a German Shepherd. I'm not a big fan of Malinois. I was the commander of a tactical team. Some of that included canines and canine handlers that I was in charge of. Malinois can be an okay service dog. I don't think they're a very good pet. They are borderline psychotic as far as personality goes, in my opinion. Unless you're going to be working them, you have sheep or something, and you're going to be working them 8 hours a day. Not the best as a pet, I think. But Rottweilers, a Dogo Argentino, a Prasa Canario, if you like the bully breeds. I have a Rhodesian Ridgeback. I really like him. Some kind of guardian dog like a Great Pyrenees or a Kangal. Anyway, a good guard dog breed. You get the point. There's other ways to home harden. Now, if you don't know, my wife and I live as neo-nomads. We travel around. We've literally been living in the forest in the Black Hills. But if you have a permanent dwelling, which most people do, and you're into gardening, don't just think about it for the beauty. It can be pretty too. But we talked about those windows. If somebody's going to crawl in your back window because your backyard is fenced in, people can go back there and take their time breaking into your house and nobody's going to know. There are some things you can do as a deterrent. Maybe plant rose bushes under your windows. Rose bushes have thorns. Also, things like Osage orange or stinging nettle or things like that. Again, if somebody's really determined to get into your house, they're going to get in. But if they're just looking for a house to break into and they have to get stuck with a bunch of thorns or stinging nettle, they're probably going to pick somewhere else. Next, I do a whole other podcast called Gunfighter Life. Been a professional gunfighter most of my adult life. As you might imagine, I'm a big fan of guns and home defense guns. I don't want to turn this show into a gun show, this episode into a gun episode. If you want, go to Gunfighter Life. You can simply Google Gunfighter Life Podcast and then / defensive guns, home defense guns, survival guns, whatever. And there should be a plethora of stuff that pops up. You can go to Spotify and type in Gunfighter Life Podcast and search that way. It'll usually, you click on the podcast and it'll say search in this show or something like that. And you can search in that podcast. But I think home defense guns absolutely unless you suffer from some kind of mental ailment or something like that, or you have some other caveat, you absolutely should consider, as an alpha male, being able to protect your family. And that includes being armed if you are legally and psychologically able to. But home defense guns. One thing I'll say on that, it's not a security blankie. Just the mere possession of it does not make you any safer. Learn it, know how to use it, be competent and effective with it. Another thing I'm going to talk about is have a plan and have several SOPs, standard operating procedures. They're not just for the military. For instance, a simple one. You're not expecting company. You hear a knock at the door. Don't answer the door. Somebody says, "Hey, are you home?" You don't answer. Your family knows this SOP. If they're in a service uniform, it's not unheard of for, criminals to dress in like uniforms, like the service technician or something like that. If they persist and are talking through the door, "Hey, we know you're home. This is blah, 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 blah. I didn't make an appointment. Have your company contact me." When they call you, check that number and verify that's an actual legit company before you ever let them step foot in your door. Do not be afraid to be rude. It may save you or your family's life. Do not be afraid to be rude. I'm not telling you to be rude for the sake of being rude. I'm telling you, if it's a safety issue, protect yourself and your family. Another common SOP. Say it is that scenario where somebody breaks in the middle of the night, presumably to do harm to you or your family. What's the SOP? Do the kids come to your master bedroom, depending on the layout of your house? Do you go to your kids' bedroom? Do they know if they hear a crash in the middle of the night, somebody kicks in the door, depending on their age and their maturity, you tell them, "Stay in your room and we'll come to you," and your SOP is you grab the gun and you egress down the hall to your kids' room? Or, depending on the layout of the house, do they know if they hear a crash in the middle of the night to come running to your room? What's the SOP? Do you shelter in place? Do you escape and evade? Is there an egress route? Can you exit that room? Having SOPs, just like you would have a fire drill. A bump in the night plan. What if you're not at home? What if you're traveling? What if you're likely staying in a hotel, motel? I'm going to give you a tip for that. Try not to stay on the first floor. Try to stay on the second floor. Not the third floor, not the fourth floor. If they give you a choice, don't just take whatever room they give you. If you can, get a room on the second floor. Why is this? Going back to the first point, coveting. A lot more people, you're going to have a lot more foot traffic walking by your room on the first floor. If the shades happen to be open and your beautiful wife is there and somebody walks by and sees that and they think, "I'm going to do whatever I want to that person." You have a lot less foot traffic generally on a second floor than a first floor. You leave the blinds open and somebody walks by, or somebody just walks by and sees you bringing valuable stuff into your room. Also, why the second floor and not the third, fourth, or fifth? Generally, if you have to, you can jump out of a second story and you're probably not going to die. You might even not get hurt. That goes down exponentially as you get to third, fourth, and fifth floors, or even higher. If you did have to exit, maybe it's not even a burglary, maybe it's just a fire. That's your only egress route. At least you have another way to get out. You can smash that window and get out. You're more likely to get out and be safe from a second story than higher up. And less likely, I think, to be the victim of a crime than you would be on the first floor. A couple of other things. OPSEC, again, not just for the military, operational security. You're going on vacation for 2 weeks, maybe don't put that on blast on social media. Maybe tell your close friends and family, but don't put a Facebook post out or an Instagram thing, "Hey, going to Hawaii for 2 weeks." So, operational security. Also, community. I think sadly we've lost that a lot in the last several decades in America. You may live in a cul-de-sac and not really know anybody, first and last name, what they do in your cul-de-sac on your block. Maybe get to know your neighbors. Get to know, hopefully everybody's on the up and up. The more you get to know them and interact with them, mutually you'll start to see each other's patterns. Pattern recognition hopefully is a thing that we just do as humans. If they know what 2 cars your family drives, and you generally go to and from work at certain times, 9 to 5, and then one day a strange vehicle shows up at 2 p.m. and they see somebody get out and walk around to the side of the house, maybe you know them. Maybe they give you a call. Hey, do you know so-and-so? Like, that's a big deal. That's a big advantage. Community. And you might reap a lot more benefits than just that. But if we're talking about home security, home hardening, community. You shall love your neighbor as yourself, right? You would want them to do that for you. You hopefully would want to do that for them. If somebody's breaking into your neighbor's house, you probably want to help them out with that. I hope I've given you some food for thought on things that you can do. I think as an alpha male, you should be able to protect and provide for your family. Hopefully you never need any of this information. But one thing sadly I heard a lot as a police officer, I never thought it would happen to me. I heard it so much I'm kind of ashamed to say that at the time I even got jaded to it. I just got tired of hearing it. I never thought it would happen to me. I never thought it would happen to me is not a plan. It's not a strategy. Don't be paranoid, but be vigilant. Watch and be ready. Gunfighters, if you listened to all of that, I really am humbled that you listen to the podcast, that you come here for advice. I'm blessed to be able to serve you. If you thought you got any kind of value in this or any other episode, hopefully you'll consider supporting. This podcast is kind of paying it forward. You can listen for free. If you get something out of it, hopefully you'll consider giving back. If this is a ministry that you feel called to support, I make no apologies in saying this is primarily a ministry. Mission statement being to make godly men strong and strong men godly. If you think that's something you want to help out with, consider becoming a patron. There should be a link in the show notes. And if not, please continue to listen for free and don't feel guilty about it. Gunfighters, if you listened to all of that, I really am humbled that you listen to the podcast, that you come here for advice. I'm blessed to be able to serve you. If you thought you got any kind of value in this or any other episode, hopefully you'll consider supporting. This podcast is kind of paying it forward. You can listen for free. If you get something out of it, hopefully you'll consider giving back. If this is a ministry that you feel called to support, I make no apologies in saying this is primarily a ministry. Mission statement being to make godly men strong and strong men godly. It's also a small business with the fees and everything associated with that. So if you want to support an American, small, employees number 1, myself, veteran operated business, if you think that's something you want to help out with, consider becoming a patron. There should be a link in the show notes. And if not, please continue to listen for free and don't feel guilty about it. With that, I want to say thanks for listening. I'm going to transition to the tactical tip. And I'm going to give you a tactical tip that has nothing to do with defense or home defense or burglaries or anything like that. How about silver? I don't think I have to tell anybody with the price of eggs and other things that inflation is a thing right now. What about silver? Now, some of my experience in the past that I didn't mention had to do with telling whether or not precious metals were real or not. Silver is a pretty unique metal in a couple of ways. A lot of metal is ferrous, meaning it's attracted to a magnet like iron. Steel, which is largely iron. Some metals are not ferrous. Copper. Some metals, the only one I'm aware of, there may be other really rare ones, but the only metal I'm aware of that actually is repelled by a magnet is silver. You have a flat surface, you have something like a Morgan silver dollar or a 1 ounce silver coin or silver bar. You can set that so it's standing up on a table if you can balance it right and bring a magnet up to it, and the magnet can actually push it over without touching it. That's pretty hard to fake. If you have a powerful enough magnet, you can actually move it across a table without touching it. It's pretty cool. Maybe a pretty cool science experiment if you have kids and silver and a really powerful magnet. But that's a pretty hard thing to fake for silver. Also, silver is actually kind of light, so if you see like a pretty legit, like Morgan Silver Dollar. When you pick it up, you might think it's going to be heavier, but it's generally a little lighter than you're thinking. Certainly lighter than like gold and steel and things like that. Silver is kind of unique in that way, and I can't really describe on audio what tarnished silver actually looks like, but it's pretty distinct as well. But that magnet one is really hard to fake. So if you're buying silver, if you're buying it from a big silver house, you're probably good. If you're buying it from somewhere else and you want to check it, that might be a really good way to check whether it's actually silver or not. Talking about honesty in doing transactions, the tactical verse of the day. You, as that alpha male, you should be honest and fair in your dealings. The verse is, "You shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another." And another one like it is this: "You shall not have in your bag differing weights, a heavy and a light. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have a perfect and a just weight and a perfect and a just measure." Be honest, men. Being a man of your word, having a reputation for being honest, fair, trustworthy, dependable man, I think is more important than silver and gold. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.